How's it going, guys? My name's Matt Holborn. I'm a jazz violinist, and I'm making videos to try and help you also become a jazz violinist. Just thought I'd jump on here. I've not planned this video out too much today, but I just wanted to talk a little bit about jazz violinists and technique. So this video is a little quick chat about technique and jazz violin and how you can make sure that you have the best technique for playing what you need to, and for coming out with lines and music that you hear in your head. So I'm coming at this from my own perspective, and which is someone who learnt violin at a young age, but didn't really engage with it as well as I could have done until I found jazz, and then spent a lot of time teaching myself, and not teaching myself about jazz because I studied on a jazz course, but actually this is the key to what I'm talking about. Is I studied on a jazz course as a violinist. There wasn't really a violin teacher around for the whole time that could help me with my technique. So I have this quite strange relationship with violin technique just because of that. I didn't come from a very strict classical background, but then I really practiced a lot in my when I was like in my early 20s and late teens, but without proper guidance from a classical teacher. I mean, I had bits of lessons throughout that time, and I had a great teacher when I was younger, but like I said, I didn't really engage in it as well as I could have done at the time. I was sort of like just being a teenager, you know. So anyway, the point that I'm trying to get to is that keeping up with your technique is super important, and even more important is to try and get that done as early as possible, because trying to right wrongs later on down the line when you've practiced and practiced and practiced is really hard. And this again, I'm coming at this with experience. I know what it's like. So, like I said, when I was first really starting to practice the violin with intensity, it was sort of without anybody giving me technical advice. It was only with advice from my lecturers at music college, who were not violinists and were just worrying about, can I play over this tune? Can I play over a blues? Do I sound convincing over rhythm changes? All that stuff, which has got nothing to do with violin technique. It meant that I have this sort of probably a unique style to some degree, a unique technique, which there'll be some good aspects of it. There's some things that I think I do really well, but there's some things that I think I missed out on. One of those things is like thinking very hard about intonation, right, from the get-go. And it's something that I've had to rethink over the last 10 years, maybe, right? Maybe a bit less than that. But yeah, over the last little while, I've had to rethink it and really try to improve on that myself. And I haven't, it's the sort of thing that I sort of wish that I had really focused on technique at the same time as focusing on my improvisation and my understanding of jazz. So I'm actually not, I'm not saying don't do what I've done, because I'm happy with where I'm at, and I enjoy my own playing, and I'm happy that I've done it in the way I have done it. But if I was to do it again, I would perhaps try to think a little bit more about technique earlier on. When I spoke to Charles Limburger, who's an amazing violinist, one of his pieces of advice, or not even pieces of advice, but he was talking about technique and talking about violin technique, not just violin technique, any sort of instrument. He was talking about learning music as being like very similar to carving into marble. So carving into marble it's a very hard thing to do. You got to chip away. You got to hit away at that little place on the marble that you want to carve into lots and lots of times for anything to happen. But when you have done it, it's really etched in there. once it's etched in there, it's quite hard to get off. If you do want to get it off and you do want to change that thing that you've hit so many times, if you want to change the face of the marble, you have to wipe the whole thing and start again. And that is a very good analogy for learning music, learning anything. It really takes a long time to get habits into our playing, but it takes a lot longer to get them out. So look, I'm jumping on here just to say, if you are in the beginning of your sort of violin or jazz violin journey, then don't forget to think about technique. If you don't have a solid technique yet, it's important that, as well as working on playing jazz, you really spend a good bit of time thinking about how you play the violin and sort of how you can make the nicest sound, the most in tune sound that you possibly can. And that's probably going to be, and it probably should be, a matter of getting a teacher. Really finding a teacher who can give you good, solid, technical advice. That is very important. It's very important to for any sort of violin playing. The violin is not. It's not like a. It's not. It's just a very difficult instrument. I remember actually taking advice from guitarists when I was first because I was spending a lot of time with guitarists, because I was on this jazz course, and there's loads of guitarists and piano players, blah blah blah, on jazz courses. I was taking advice or listening to people's advice about technique who didn't play the violin. I remember different guitarists saying, "Yeah, my teacher says don't bother thinking about technique. Technique will just come from practicing." I'm not saying that all guitarists think like that, but I am saying that guitarists might not have to think as much about technique as violinists do, because if you're a guitarist and you've got sort of your own technique, the chances are all that's going to do is it might make some things slightly difficult to play and all that, but you might still be able to get that stuff played. With the violin, if you find something difficult to play, chances are it's going to sound really, really bad. When the violin goes wrong, it really goes wrong. So for me, I think it's important that we as violinists, we spend as much time as we can thinking about technique, thinking about intonation, thinking about bowing, thinking about all these things. And yeah, I'm coming at it from this perspective of, hey, I've done it this way. I'm happy with where I'm at, but if I could have done it again, I would perhaps do it in a slightly different way. If I was going to do it again, what I would do is I would do everything that I've done, but I would have made sure that I have a good technical teacher, a good classical violin teacher who could give me that sort of guidance. And you know what, guys, it's very hard, it's actually very hard as a jazz violinist to find a teacher who's going to give you good technical advice. And it can be hard to find a teacher who will understand what you're talking about and understand where you're coming from, and sort of get behind you on that. It's not impossible. It's 100% possible, but it might be just a little bit harder. If you're a classical violinist and you're saying, "Hey, I want to get my technique better," your chances are the best teachers at that are going to understand where you're coming from. Whereas maybe the best technical teachers in your area, maybe they don't understand they might not understand the jazz thing. They might not understand what you're trying to achieve. So that can be quite difficult. So yeah, my advice is to you, if you are starting out in your jazz violin career and you haven't yet got a sort of solid technique for intonation, for bowing, for all that stuff, it's my advice that you try and get that sorted as soon as possible. It will really make the rest of your sort of jazz violin journey a lot easier and a lot more enjoyable. Now, like I said, the last thing, I'm happy with where I'm at. I like doing what I do, and I enjoy, the journey that I'm on. I'm still enjoying it. I'm still enjoying practicing. I'm still enjoying getting better and all that. But yeah, that's just my advice for somebody who is first starting out. Thanks very much for listening, guys. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe and do all that stuff. Share it with people that you think might need to hear this. And if you are enjoying all of this stuff that I'm putting out at the moment, you can get involved and learn with me by joining my Jazz Violin Practice Club. The Jazz Violin Practice Club is a place where you can tune in every Monday, which is 6 p.m. UK time, and practice along with something that I'm working on at the moment. So it's really good for jazz violinists or violinists who are working on their jazz, who just need that little bit of practice accountability and looking for things to work on. We look at different things every week. We're generally following a bit of a theme because it's really just following my practice at the time, the things that I'm thinking about. So yeah, it's an interesting little place, and a lot of people have got a lot of stuff out of it. So hopefully see you there.